Hello, my name is Frankie Romero. I am with the U.S. Forest Service. I'm Fire Use Program Manager working out of the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. My presentation today is entitled Increasing the Pace and Scale of Prescribed Fire, and specifically I'm going to be talking about the U.S. Forest Service, but hopefully these thoughts and comments are applicable wherever you work. So first off, I want to preface this with the objective of this presentation is not to present any results, but rather to provide a bit of a status update and hopefully some insights into where the U.S. Forest Service is in terms of this dialogue of how do we get there. As I know, many other agencies, bureaus, and all other stakeholders in the wildland fire arena have similar interests. So, this has been a multi-year brainstorming session. We have, like many of you in city, county, tribal governments, state forestry, other federal agencies, we've all been looking at the research that is out there about the benefits of prescribed fire. Also taking a look at some of the recent research on what are some of the barriers that we might be able to address as managers to help us realize this increase, this desired increase, and a lot of help from the media and non-governmental organizations and other proponents have been helping in this conversation for a long time. But we have been sort of in this brainstorming phase of our development for quite a while, and we are hoping, at least within the U.S. Forest Service, to quite soon kind of take that next step and move past our formulation phase and be able to develop the kind of guidance that's going to direct our programs in the years to come. Really, this has been a good idea, but now we find ourselves in a time and place where there is force behind it. Not the least of which is the recent passage of the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, which for the U.S. Forest Service, as well as Department of Interior bureaus, provides a mandate as well as funding directing us to take action towards increasing the use of prescribed fire on those lands that we manage. So we're definitely at a point in time where we are looking to take this next step here soon. So hopefully many of you are in the same boat, and I would really like to hear from where others are in your dialogue and continue to compare notes. So before I get going about what the course forward that we're possibly plotting, just to give everybody a reference point, here's some information on where we're starting from. So for those that are not familiar, the U.S. Forest Service administers the National Forest System lands, forests and grasslands across the country. And in total, there are 193 million acres across 44 U.S. states. On those lands, on an annual basis, we ignite roughly 4,500 prescribed fire projects each year, treating roughly 1.4 million acres. The distribution of that is weighted heavily towards the eastern United States, which treats a little over 1 million acres a year on average, with roughly 300,000 acres occurring in the western regions. So that's our starting point. So when we began to look at so that's where we're starting from. We were endeavoring to increase from there. So what kind of an increase are we talking about? So, here's a couple of papers for reference. This is not a complete list, but the Valiant Reinhardt paper, as well as the Ager paper, bibliographies in there have great lists for those that are curious. But when we kind of look at the work that's been done to date, those investigators that have endeavored to ask this question, we see that a lot of them wind up making recommendations that fall somewhere in that 30 million to 60 million acres treated to achieve whether achieve objectives, whether those objectives that in that particular research were described as reduction of wildfire risk or as restoration of a particular condition. That tends to be where they land. A more recent study, the scenario planning exercise done by Rocky Mountain Research Station, that one is actually prescribed this notion of treating 20 million acres within 10 years and then maintaining it thereafter. So those are the kinds of numbers that are coming in. And then of course the Infrastructure Investment Act not only recommends, but mandates the federal agencies, U.S. Forest Service and Department of Interior, to treat 1 million acres of priority federal lands within the next 6 years. So you can see we're talking at least on the order of tens of millions of acres is the kind of scale that we're probably going to be striving for. So taking that information, we've had several conversations, and right now I'm going to present you with which is right now kind of our leading idea. And it's this idea of a surge and sustain strategy, where we would endeavor to create an inventory. Right now we've picked 30 million acres as a, it would stretch us out, but we believe it's achievable and would be the kind of investment that would result in the kind of changes we're looking to make. And so, you know, the first goal would be to create an inventory of 30 million acres by addressing our highest priority areas first and bringing those areas to their to completion in terms of the desired condition we would like to have those acres in terms of fuels. Not only creating the inventory, but sustaining it over time. And so the second part of this equation is once you build it, you have to maintain it. We expect that the majority of that would be done through the use of prescribed fire. And in order to maintain an inventory of 30 million acres, right now we are estimating that that's probably going to require a program that's capable of treating roughly 4 million acres per year in order to maintain that level. So, you know, that kind of gives you an idea of right now our prevailing thought in terms of the type of program that we expect we're going to have to be working towards in the years to come, and this idea of a surge and sustain strategy towards getting there. So what's that going to look like over time? So credit my coworker Frank Fay here for this illustration, but right now as program managers, our belief is we already have an inventory of treatments that we have already done since the advent of the National Fire Plan in 2000. However, we got a long ways to go to work towards a total inventory of 30 million acres that is maintained over time. So initially, we believe that we're going to be investing a lot more of our effort and resource into those high-risk areas in need of treatment and bringing those areas into the inventory. However, we expect that a few years down the line, and we don't know exactly where this is going to occur, could be 5, could be 10 years, we don't know. But at some point in the future, we think there's going to be this inflection point where as we continue to add to the inventory and we prioritize maintenance of that inventory, we are going to see sometime in our future that our program is going to shift to one where the majority of our effort is going to be placed in maintaining the existing inventory of hazardous fuels treatments. And eventually, we know we can't treat every high risk area that's out there. We think we're going to continue to make adjustments and address high risk whenever we can. However, we do anticipate that over time, that's going to be less and less of an emphasis, and our future program is probably going to be most involved or most focused on maintaining the existing inventory. So that's kind of our prevailing thought right now, is this idea of surge and sustain. However, we know that there's a lot of other things that we need to address in order to facilitate that. First of which is our workforce. We know that our workforce historically has been built with the idea of providing a formidable wildfire response capacity. If we now intend to maintain that wildfire response capacity while also bringing to bear a formidable prescribed fire and fuels capacity, we are going to need to make adjustments to our fuels or to our workforce in general. Structurally, we're going to have to design it a little bit differently. Besides structural changes, we're going to have to think about the management controls that we have in place for how we train, hire, and deploy our workforce. Right now, we are having conversations about such things as changing the timing of when we hire and train our workforce so that we're better prepared to take advantage of peak prescribed fire season. And whereas in the past, we've been mostly focused on our preparedness for the wildfire response workload. The idea of full mobility for prescribed fire, similar to our wildfire response, where we want to be able to mobilize the entirety of our workforce for wildfire response wherever they're needed. Similarly, prescribed fire, we would like to get to a point where we're able to mobilize our full workforce to take advantage of prescribed fire windows wherever and whenever they appear. And then we're going to have to continue to balance the prescribed fire work in those places that are able to with what seems to be a recurring instance of national preparedness level 4 and 5 wildfire seasons where the demand for wildfire response is extremely high and is a draw on our workforce as a whole. However, we need to be conscious that every time we throw everything we got at wildfires and we are not consciously keeping up with the need to maintain some level of prescribed fire in order to reduce future risk, we're losing ground there. So that's going to be a continual balancing act we're going to have to focus on. We are excited about the opportunities for adopting new technology and refining some of our processes. There's been really big advancements in the area of unmanned aerial systems, both for aerial ignition of prescribed fire, as well as pre and post monitoring. So we're really enthusiastic about how use of that technology is going to propel our programs. We also think there's opportunity to refine our environmental processes. We're always looking at ways we can, conduct our NEPA analysis and do other environmental analysis in a more streamlined fashion. And we are encouraged that as we shift from a program that is changing the current condition into the desired condition for fuels, into a program that in the future is not really going to be changing the condition. Instead, we're going to be focused on maintaining the desired condition that we've already created in terms of more focus on repeat maintenance treatments. And so we're excited that we expect we're going to see opportunities for increased use of categorical exclusion when we're more focused on repeat maintenance burning, as well as the opportunity to do more refined and streamlined pre-burn surveys for wildlife, cultural resources, and other resource areas where we have to do physical surveys prior to burning. We're hopeful and expect that that's going to get a little bit quicker as we start doing repeat maintenance treatments rather than initial injury. We know that we can't go this alone, and we're going to have to be in lockstep with our neighbors and partners in terms of being better at coordinating and cooperating across boundaries. We feel pretty good that we have the authorities we need in Good Neighbor, Wyden, Tribal Forest Protection Act, and others to get the work done we need to do. But we think there's room for improvement in terms of our both our workforce capacity to enter into and administer these agreements, as well as our processes. And we think there's room for growth to get better at just being able to enter into agreements with our neighbors, and then the efficiency in administering these agreements so that we can get the work done. We also expect that management ignited prescribed fire probably can't carry the entire load, and we are going to have to get some help from wildfires along the way. Right now on National Forest System lands, we see an average of about 2 million acres of wildfire each year. This has been on an increasing trend, but generally speaking, right now we've seen an average of 2 million acres. Of that, on average, about 500,000 acres are burning from naturally caused ignitions, and they're burning in a manner that is consistent with the land management objectives, which means they are doing the same work as if we had ignited a prescribed fire. And so after a natural ignition, we will go in, do a post-fire assessment, and if we determine that the fire effects did move us in the direction that our forest plan wants us to go, we count those as fuel treatments. We expect that in the future, we should see that level start to rise from 500,000 acres a year. We think we're going to see more and more positive results from wildfires, from natural ignitions, just as a function of the overall area out there as our inventory of treated areas starts to increase, as well as fire footprints continue to grow. The fuel levels across the entire landscape should be coming down. And as those fuel levels come down, intensity should come down in general. And our expectation is that we should see in the future more favorable wildfire effects. So that's right now our leading theory, and something we'll be monitoring closely in the future. So what does this trajectory possibly look like? So here's our attempt right now to try to visualize what's it going to take over the next 10 to 20 years to get us to where we want to go in terms of getting more good fire on the landscape, both in terms of prescribed fire as well as a contribution from wildfire. So here's where we're starting: 1.4 million acres a year of prescribed fire. We get roughly 500,000 a year from wildfires contribution. And so right now we're seeing almost 2 million acres a year on average of good fire on the landscape. Like we discussed earlier, if we're shooting for a target somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million acres, that's probably going to require a program that is able to maintain roughly 4 million acres a year in desired conditions. So, if we project that out, we see that we're going to need a prescribed fire program in the U.S. Forest Service that 10 to 15 years from now is going to have to be roughly double its current outputs, and it's going to have to be producing somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million acres per year. But we don't have to do it all with prescribed fire. We do expect that we should see contributions from naturally ignited wildfires also increasing as the total area treated increases. And so, the combined impact of those two efforts, we're expecting in 15 years, give or take a few, should put us in that area close to about 4 million acres of good fire a year in the future. So, right now that's our vision. That's what we've mapped out, and is kind of our leading theory on how we would like to proceed. So, kind of to wrap this all up, You know, what we've presented to you is right now some of our leading thinking in terms of a strategy for how the U.S. Forest Service might endeavor to increase the pace and scale of prescribed fire. It starts with this strategy of surge and sustain to try to create an inventory and then maintain it over time. To realize that, we know we're going to have to address our workforce and redesign our workforce. And we're going to have to pursue efficiencies and new technology and refined processes. We're going to have to get better at collaborating, cooperating with partners and adjacent landowners. And we're going to need to get some help from wildfires to make this all come together. So I thank you all for your attention. You know, to wrap this up, we are still kind of in that brainstorming phase. However, very, very soon, our anticipation is that we're going to be giving direction to our U.S. Forest Service employees on where we want to go in terms of a long-term strategy and direction to guide our programs. We know that many of you are doing the same with your agencies and would love to hear your feedback on our ideas here and hear more about the ideas that you all are pursuing with your programs as well, and learn from each other. Is this idea ambitious? Yes, and some may say maybe not ambitious enough, but you know, certainly talking to our managers, we think that it does present a lot of work out ahead of us. But ambitious as it may be, it's really fun to imagine the difference it could make when we successfully achieve it. Just imagining the reduction in losses from wildfire and the resulting ecosystems that are healthier and more productive, and their ability to provide ecosystem services such as clean water, clean air, great world-class recreation and wildlife and fisheries habitat, and our own, you know, from a selfish agency employee standpoint, for us and our coworkers to have a safer place to work where we can be more efficient when we're responding to wildfires and more effective when responding to wildfires. You know, all those things combined really make this a fun and interesting endeavor. So again, I hope this was informative and really look forward to your feedback. So thank you very much for your attention.